Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining me today. So just to recap, so far in our IT Online Learning Prince2 version 7 series, we have covered the project context and what project actually is in Prince2. So today we're going to be chatting about the wonderful world of Prince2 Principles. I know what you're thinking, Prince2 Principles? How exciting. But trust me, by the end of the session, you will see just how crucial and, to be honest, quite straightforward these principles are or can be. You can think of them as almost the guiding stars that will keep our projects on track and keep them successful. So let's get started. First things first, what are the Prince2 principles? Or what are they? What are principles? Simply put, they are the guiding obligations that determine whether a project is genuinely being managed using Prince2. So these principles are there to ensure the effective application and tailoring of Prince2 to any project, which makes it suitable for every project, regardless of its type or the size or the complexity or the delivery method or the industry. And that being said, it's kind of a matter of whether you're working in commercial or governmental or nonprofit organizations. Prince2 can be adapted to fit your project's needs, and like we chatted about in our previous webinar, it's applicable worldwide too. Okay, so let's break down the Prince2 principles. We have ensure continued business justification, learn from experience, define roles, responsibilities, and relationships, manage by stages, manage by exception, focus on products, and tailor to suit the project. It sounds like a lot, but we'll make it make sense. Okay, so the first principle is ensure continued business justification. Now, this means that a project has to have a justifiable reason to start, and that this justification has to remain valid throughout the entire duration of the project's life cycle. So you can think of it like, let's say you want to buy a gym membership. You don't just buy a gym membership because it sounds good. You need to have a reason, like you want to get fit or you want to lose weight. And then you need to keep on justifying that reason by actually going to the gym and seeing results. If you're halfway through the year and you realize you're not going at all, think to yourself, only been twice, probably time to reconsider that investment. And no judgment and no shame in that. We've all been there. Okay. So as we know, every project is unique. So you could also probably compare it to traveling to a new destination for the first time. You're going to be using a map or the Maps application on your phone to make sure that you are staying on course as you travel to get to your destination safely and in the most effective way. That is what ensure continued business justification is about. Okay. Now, practically in a project, let's say you are launching a new product to increase market share. Business justification could be the forecasted or maybe the projected increase in sales and in market presence. Now, if during the project, the market conditions change or the product isn't viable anymore, it's better to stop and then reallocate those resources. It would be like canceling your gym membership and then investing in maybe home workout equipment instead. Just reallocating those resources to somewhere where it might be a little bit more worthwhile. Okay, next up, we have learn from experience. So this principle is all about seeking, recording, and implementing improvements based on lessons learned from previous projects and throughout the current project. So, for example, I Googled a brownie recipe, and the first time I made them, I realized that they came out a little bit burnt. They were very flat. It was almost like a thin cake. Then the next time I made them, I doubled that recipe and I monitored them a lot better to make sure that they were still nice and moist on the inside, nice and dense. And now I have a brownie recipe that my friends and family rave about because I learned from my experience each time that I made them, and I adjusted things according to the lessons I'd learned. So in project management, this principle is going to allow you to almost build just this library of wisdom that future project teams can refer to so that they can avoid past mistakes and really leverage those proven strategies that people have learned from previous projects. Our third principle is define roles, responsibilities, and relationships. Okay, so this ensures that everybody involved in the project knows what they're responsible for, they know who they need to communicate with. And the reason why we have this is when we have a very well-structured team with very clearly defined roles, we avoid confusion, okay? And then we're also enhancing collaboration and making sure that all aspects of the project are covered. So it's like when you go to see your favorite band or visit the orchestra, for instance. Every musician knows their part, and that's what gives us a really harmonious performance that we can enjoy instead of throwing all of their instruments down a flight of stairs and calling it music. So putting this into practice, let's say that we have a software development project. The project manager might make sure that the developers and the testers and the designers all have very clearly defined roles. So we know that the developers are going to write the code, the testers are going to find the bugs, the designers are going to create that really engaging user interface. And these clear roles are going to prevent anyone from stepping on each other's toes and also will allow for a lot more accountability. Yeah. Principle number 4 is manage by stages. So this means planning, monitoring, and controlling the project stage by stage. It's like running a relay race. You can't continue the race until the baton has been passed on to the next person. So you can think of every stage as being a baton that has to be passed on to make sure that the project is almost progressing nice, smoothly as you go on. So as you can see on screen, when we are managing by stages, we're actually managing from left to right. Okay, so if we had to visualize it, we have these arrows going across from left to right. The manage by stages principle is it's horizontal. You can visualize it as being horizontal, and we can't move on from stage 2 unless we have fully completed it. So we can't go to stage 3 if we're still busy with stage 2. Okay. Let's say that we have a marketing campaign, and this first little stage over here, stage 1, is research, and the second stage over here is going to be creating the content for the campaign, and then stage 3 will be actually launching the campaign. By managing each of the stages separately, you are essentially ensuring that the project progresses well and you're addressing any of the issues or concerns that crop up at each stage before they become these massive problems that are going to be very difficult to overcome in the future. Moving on to manage by exception. This principle establishes limits of delegated authority by defining tolerances for performance. Whoa, what now? Okay, so this one sounds a lot more complicated, but I promise it's not. So let's break it down. When we're talking about managing by exception, we're talking about delegating authority. Okay, so if we had to visualize it, unlike manage by stages where we manage from left to right, when it comes to manage by exception, we are looking at more of a top to bottom situation. So we could draw a little diagram like this, just to visualize everything. Now, we know that we have 3 layers of management. We have the directing layer, we have the managing layer, and then we have the delivery layer. Authority is delegated down from each of these layers from top to bottom. Okay, and we have tolerances in place for decision-making purposes. I mean, as long as we have a kind of tolerance in place, we know that any deviations that take place during the project are going to be tolerated to a certain point. Now, if we have a zero tolerance policy during a project, it means that we're going to have a very micromanaged project, because even the smallest and the most seemingly insignificant deviation would need to be escalated to the project board immediately. So as you can see here, we've got quite a good gap between the target and the tolerance. We can see some deviation from the target, but the second we hit that tolerance, we have to escalate this decision. Okay. So let's say that we have a set of parents, Mary and John. They go on holiday and they leave Dean, their eldest son, to take care of his younger brother, Sam. This is a supernatural reference. So John and Mary have essentially delegated authority to Dean to take care of the house and to take care of Sam, just like the directing layer would delegate authority to the managing layer. That gives Dean the authority to take the role of the parents while they are away. within the defined tolerances of maybe keeping the house tidy, making sure that Sam is safe, making sure the house is locked up at night, keeping the pets fed, all of that kind of stuff. Now, let's say that Dean over here in the managing layer has taken some of that authority and he has delegated it down to Sam. And now Sam has to do chores. Okay, and this is the same way that the managing layer is going to delegate to the delivery layer. Okay. On the flip side of things now, just for some extra insight, let's say that little Sam is outside and he's busy raking up the leaves in the backyard, and he decides he's going to climb a tree, and he breaks his arm because he fell out of the tree. He's now run into some harm, and now, because of that, they have breached a tolerance. Okay. Now, Dean will have to report back to Mary and John to tell them what happened and to ask them what he should do. What decision should be made here? Should they come back home? Should Dean call a friend or a family member to take them to the hospital to make sure that Sam is okay? That is essentially what we are looking at when we're managing by exception. We have a target. We may deviate from this target. The second that we breach a tolerance, we have to escalate. If we had a zero tolerance policy over here, okay, so let's imagine these tolerance lines over here, we're pushed all the way close to this target line. This in and of itself, this section over here, would be a deviation and we would have to escalate it to the project board. Okay, so using the same example, let's say that there's zero tolerance and Sam didn't do the dishes at 6 p.m. because he was in the middle of watching a movie. Because he has breached a zero tolerance in this project, Dean would then have to phone Mary and John to report that tolerance and say that it's been breached. And then Mary and John have to make a decision as to how they're going to handle things going forward. So are they going to ground him? Are they going to ignore it? Are they going to come back home? This is very time consuming and very tedious. And a lot of the time it could be considered just a straight up waste of time. So it's very important to make sure that the tolerances in place are going to be effective for the progress of the project and not going to be wasting time, or not going to be so broad and so wide that your tolerances are not suitable for the project that you're working on. Okay. Focus on products is our sixth principle, and it emphasizes defining and delivering products that meet user quality expectations. So it's like cooking. You're not just going to focus on the cooking process, you're going to focus on the end product, which is hopefully a delicious meal, okay? So let's say that we are working on a project, and we're doing an app development project. So focusing on the final product means clearly defining the app's features and the user experience. And that's going to ensure that the development team knows exactly what to build. And that's going to avoid unnecessary work. And it's also going to keep the project aligned with user needs and with quality requirements. Okay. And then last but not least, we have tailor to suit the project. This principle ensures that Prince2 is adapted to fit the specific needs of the project. Quite straightforward. So for a small agile project, you might simplify the documentation and you might focus a little bit more on flexibility. On the other hand, if you have a much larger, complex project, maybe you would need more detailed planning and control. So tailoring Prince2 makes sure it fits just right for every single project. Okay. So to wrap it up, Prince2 principles provide a really robust framework that can be adapted to manage any project successfully. Remember, it's not about just following the rules and getting on with it, but understanding the spirit and the logic behind them to drive your projects to success. I hope that this session has given you a deeper understanding of the Prince2 principles and how they can be applied to your projects. If you have any questions or you need further clarification, or even if you'd just like to share your experience, please feel free to drop a comment. If you found today's webinar insightful, feel free to subscribe so that you can be notified as soon as we post our next webinar, which will be around the people element of Prince2 version 7. Thank you so much for joining this webinar on Prince2 Principles. Keep these guiding stars in mind, and May all your projects be successful.